But if it's just numbers on the screen and you're not actually meeting the people, you don't see them, like, I think that is easy to get desensitized, because it's like, I don't know what impact I'm having. I don't know if I'm having an impact, you know? You could do comment sections too, but some people, well, the majority of people who watch don't comment. So it's like, you don't know where you stand. You don't know what you're doing right or doing wrong. Or you have only a little idea of what you're doing right and doing wrong.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm John Santiago, your host of the Videocraft show, presented by Video Husky. And in case you are new around here, it is my job, my role, to talk to content creators, specifically those building platforms and audiences for themselves using video. And this week, my guest is someone who is taking a bit of a different path as a content creator, specifically a different path as someone who is originally from North America. Jared Ammon Gilet might seem like an unlikely ambassador for the Philippines, but if you spend a little time with him, he actually speaks flawless Tagalog. You'll soon learn that he is actually the perfect man for the job. Filipinos all around the world know Jared by his YouTube handle, Puting Pinoy. Since 2018, Jared has been creating videos online, striving to bridge the gap between Filipinos both in the Philippines and around the world. Jared fell in love with the Philippines after serving as a missionary from 2008 to 2010 in some of the country's most impoverished regions, and after almost a decade away, he decided to relocate from the US and return to the Philippines on a more permanent basis. And he is taking a bit of an unconventional path towards building an audience for himself. And having the conversation with Jared, it's something more than just gaining a following, right? And I think that is something that is important. Ideally, honestly, if you're pursuing this path as a creator, just even speaking from my perspective as someone who at this point is hosting a podcast that is still very small in size in terms of listens and whatnot, it's important to have some sort of bigger mission or bigger idea in mind. And it's not solely about the views and the subscribers for Jared, and that is something that is very clear when I got to chat with him for this conversation. I think the thing that really stuck out to me, and you will hear it later on in the conversation, it comes probably a little bit half hour or so into the conversation, maybe 40 minutes or so, is just his ups and downs with dealing with the expectations of being a creator. You know, there was a poignant moment where he talked about having some really cool pieces of content that he believes could do really well, but just kind of being a little gun shy about it, just because he's not sure how he would feel if his audience wasn't receptive to it in terms of engagement and views. And again, it's part of the creative process. You know, even me, as I do this podcast, I'm constantly thinking about, well, how is this going to be received? Will people misinterpret what I'm saying or the questions that I'm asking for ulterior motives? And that is something that goes through the mind of creators, just like Jared. He was also very forthcoming about his ups and downs when it comes to figuring out the business side of being a creator. You know, I've had the pleasure now of, doing more than 20 episodes of this podcast, and I've gotten a chance to chat with some creators who are doing this really well and figuring out how to make a full-time living from it. And I've had a chance to talk to creators who are just doing it as a side hustle. And I've talked to creators like Jared who are still trying to solve that puzzle. It's not an easy thing to figure out as a creative person. And I'm sure some of you who are creators, that probably is a huge pain point for you as well, because you just want to focus on making the art. You just want to focus on making the videos, asking questions, following your curiosity, doing things, showcasing the experiences that you have through video. But figuring out business strategy, marketing your show, finding other ways to promote the show, to grow the audience, creating products that you could potentially sell to the audience, it's not something that comes natural to creators. And, I admire Jared for being very open about that. And we chatted about that at length in this conversation. I will note that this conversation between Jared and I actually was much, much longer than the final cut that you were going to hear. The reason why I trimmed some of the discussion is because I didn't feel that it was totally relevant to you guys, the audience, who are interested in the stories of content creators, their processes, their approaches to tackling the content creation game. But it was good conversation nonetheless. And so those sections, we talked a lot about culture, Filipino culture, Phil-Am culture, Filipino American culture. Again, stuff that's not totally relevant, I think, to what you guys are looking for, like the juice, I would say, about being a content creator. And I actually will probably repurpose that content in some other shape or form, maybe as a blog post. But if you guys would like to see that content, watch it, hear it, let me know in the comments below, and we'll figure out a way to get it out there at some point. Again, it was good conversation. It just was on me as the interviewer actually to like steer the conversation more on topic in regards to the subject of this podcast: stories and experiences, strategies of building an audience through video. And we kind of meandered off topic, and so that's why I cut out those sections. But again, if you would like to hear it, you would like to see it, you would like to consume it in any shape or form, let me know in the comments below, and we'll figure out a way to deliver that to you. So before we get started and I toss it over to my conversation with Jared, I want to remind everybody, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like this video if you are enjoying the podcast. Subscribe to the podcast wherever it is that you get your podcasts. We're available on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And just support the show. We appreciate your support. I appreciate your support. You know, we've gotten some comments here and there, and feedback is always good to us. So if you want to leave us a review, feel free to do that on Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review us. And on that note, let's go ahead and toss it to my conversation with Jared Ammon Gilet, aka Puting Pinoy. Jared Ammon Gilet. Hey man, thank you for joining me on this edition of the Videocraft show presented by Video Husky. It is great to have you on.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we were chatting here a little bit, and before I started recording, and you know, I found out about your content from another previous guest of the Videocraft show, who is a mutual friend now of both of us. Now, Tom's a great guy, Tom Kugler.
Yep.
Check out that episode, and if you haven't already. And you were about to tell me a story about Tom.
Oh yeah.
Like, why don't we just open that this conversation up with just like your connection to Tom and where that all started and where that came from?
Yeah, so it's really pretty funny because the way my YouTube channel got started was something I had posted on my personal Facebook profile. It was a response to a viral video of an elderly woman being racist towards a Filipino American and her Mexican American husband. And anyway, I created my channel based on that. So from that time, because that video went viral, and from that time, I started noticing like other content creators who make Filipino content, whether they're Filipino or, foreigner. And Tom came up, and Tom had some videos that I really didn't feel good about. And another person you might be aware of, or maybe not yet, is Dwayne Woolley. He's a foreigner Filipino YouTuber as well, who speaks Tagalog and Bisaya. But we would like get on the phone and we would talk about this, like, what is going on? Like, you know, he had a video like Filipinos are the best people. And it was like, this is a sweet sentiment, but you don't know the language. You lack a lot of insight to how things in the Philippines actually work. So to be making these statements, and then you're going to benefit from it because Filipinos, due to post-colonial issues, are going to love the fact that they're being praised, even if the praise is misinformed or misguided. You know, the thing that really got me about that video was Filipinos are the least judgmental. And I mean, any Filipino chismis is a word, that is like very, very commonly used.
Yes.
So for me, it was like for somebody like him or just anybody, any foreigner to benefit from basically just giving false praise or misinformed praise was an issue to me. It was like you should be grounded in what you're saying and what you like. You should just be genuine. And I think, and then it was, Tom had made this video about a foreigner, about the best Filipino vlogger, YouTuber. And it was this guy named Sandy, who's Lost Juan is his name. And he said he's the best, but I was like, well, you don't know Tagalog or Bisaya, so how can you qualitatively state that he's the best? And that was my only issue. I was like, no, he's got great content, but you don't even understand the language to be able to have a pool to say, hey, this is also a contender or whatever. You know what I mean? Which I got. He was trying to promote this specific channel and thought that was very sweet of him and kind of him. But it led to us getting into this little argument. This was 2.5 years. This was like 2 years later. Okay. So we had been like, I'd been having feelings about Tom for about 2 years, like, I don't like this content. But I'd still watch it because he started making more meaningful content as well, where he started actually making commentary that was worth it. What I thought was worthy of speaking and saying, and didn't feel like it was speaking out of school. Then when he and I got into this little back and forth, this argument on YouTube, finally we ended up deciding to have a private conversation. He got the points that I was saying, and I told him about Pinoybaiting. I told him about just kind of the importance of trying to really, really understand the Philippines and really like learning the language and different things like that so that you could qualitatively like make commentary. Because if you don't, it's just, I personally don't feel like it's doing anybody any favors, So, but anyway, from that point, we became really good friends. And then he made videos that, he actually made a video before we had talked about thumbnails that he didn't like people always being shocked or people always being emotional. And
Yes.
That was when Dwayne and I were talking like, oh man, he's made something good. Like, I think let's make our video where we kind of do a parody of people like foreigners who come to the Philippines and everything changed them. Everything made them emotional. Everything shocked them, so we made a parody of that. And then that's kind of what got the wheels turning and led to me and Tom becoming friends. But yeah, he's a very, very genuine person, very genuine creator. And I think even at the times that he was Pinoybaiting, I think it was coming from a good place in his heart. But a lot of people, and being on the niche of being a foreign YouTuber in the Philippines, which I think I fall more into the being in the Filipino side of the creators versus the foreigners being over here. But to just see that foreigners make these unqualified statements or obviously overact reactions in order to garner a
response
and a following, that was just something that didn't sit right with me ever. And yeah, Tom really got that. He really got that point. So yeah, we've been friends since.
That's very cool, though. It's very fascinating, and it doesn't surprise me just from the conversation that I had from him that he responded in that fashion. It seems like he really took it to heart, and I think ultimately that's what you ask for, right? Is like I'm sure if you could have that conversation with like some of the other kinds of content creators who may be, exploiting it, and they would have a similar response where they're open to hearing that criticism, hearing that feedback, and then maybe turning in a different direction.
Yeah, there have been a few who actually reached out. I'm not going to mention names specifically just because they also have shared information with me that confirms the suspicions of disingenuous things from their one-on-one interaction with other YouTubers. So, but yes, it is a very, very real thing. People do very, very knowledgeably come to the Philippines to get views and ramp up their act in order to get those views.
Yeah, it was such a fascinating topic to discuss with Tom, and I'm glad that we're actually like opening this conversation up with that, because it can kind of just be like a part 2 to what he and I discussed about Pinoybaiting, because as I mentioned to him, this was a concept that was totally new and foreign to me. I had come across it in an email newsletter that I subscribed to. And being Filipino myself, I'm Filipino American, but you're probably much more Filipino than me, considering you live there. But it was just I just see it from like so many different angles, right? Because also as a from like the marketing perspective, I can see why they're doing that, just to kind of bump up those vanity metrics of, hey, we have like millions of views, we have millions of subscribers. But then at the same time, they're also not being genuine to advertisers in the United States or in Western countries, because their audience is predominantly Filipino.
Yes.
If they were to come to a company that is based in the United States and say, hey, we have an audience of 1 million subscribers, come promote your product, through us, and you're not reaching an American audience, that's an issue.
One of the things that a lot of these that one of them very specifically has said was, all of our subscribers, 97% of our subscribers and viewers are in BGC, which is, the affluent part of Manila. And it's like, seriously? How can you tell? Regions are not broken down in analytics. It's countries. It's broken down by countries. So, well, and that's another disingenuous thing. A lot of foreigners will go viral for talking about tourism in the Philippines. Well, for one thing, and this is something I'll be making content on at some point, is tourism really that great of a benefit, or are there also dark and negative things to it that should also be considered? But aside from that, it's like this sort of weird inception thing. It's like we're making these videos for other foreigners, but in reality, 90+% of their viewers are Filipino. So how could they? Do you get what I'm saying? It feels very disingenuous.
Yes, yeah. It's just, it's really a fascinating subject to like explore from like so many different angles, and it, something that I talked about with Tom in that conversation was just, and this too from being there, like a part of the reason why you can get your videos, you can get away with Pinoybaiting in the Philippines is because the Philippines is just a very technologically engaged country.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I shared the story with him that I remember going to the Philippines in my teenage years, seeing like everyone just on their phones texting. They were far more advanced than us here in the States. So they're just a country that's just always online. They're probably, I'm just making like a blanket statement here. So if anybody listening wants to call me out and say that I'm wrong, but I feel like in terms of content consumption, they might be one of the biggest countries in the entire world.
Yeah, they actually have articles about that you could cite. Yeah, so it's definitely a thing for sure.
And that's where I wanted to talk to you, because you're navigating this space of being someone who is not from the Philippines, but you are part of the culture there. Like you integrated. Yeah,
it's really weird. It's like I call myself a third culture adult. Like it's weird. It's weird.
Really. Yeah. It's and the thing that you bring up too about like tourism as well. Like I I had those feelings myself of being someone who I've partaken in, like the digital nomad trails around the world at times, working remotely from different places like Indonesia and Colombia and whatnot. And, when you're when you are when you're idealizing that before you get to those places, it's, again, you're idealizing it. You have these ideas in your head of what it's going to be like. And then when you get there, you kind of have these feelings of like, what am I doing to contribute to this place rather than just like take, right? Because we all know, like you and I both being from the States, we have the advantage of basically operating in US dollars where our money goes a much longer way. Yet at the same time, like, yes, it's great to do that, but at the same time, just wanting to think and consider, like, I don't want to just be taking all the time from these countries. I want to also figure out a way to contribute. And I don't know if I've done the best job of that at places that I've been. And I think about that more and more when it comes to if once I get back out in the world again, like what I might do.
Yeah, I mean the weird thing about this one for me is in terms of monetary gain, I really I think throughout my 2 years, almost going on 3 years of Puting Pinoy, I've made maybe a total of $1,300 from ad revenue. So it's really not even that much. I happen to have super, super supportive parents at this point that just believe in me and what I'm doing. And so, and then I have a few, people contributing to my channel as well. So that's a huge help. But in terms of how much I'm actually making, like if I were to cut my parents out, I'd be making the same amount as a Filipino, if not less. You know what I mean? So like, that's another part where it's weird because there are stereotypes here that foreigners, basta, basta.
Yeah.
Like, do you speak Tagalog?
Yeah, I understand Tagalog, so
Okay,
it's funny because I have my colleagues here at Video Husky, they're Filipino, so I tell them, like, you can speak Tagalog to me. I'll understand you.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, basta puti, like mayaman. As long as you're white, you're rich.
Yes, yeah. That was something I watched So I was watching the replay of your stream that you did a couple days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, wasn't it? Of your reaction to that video of
Johnny and Tildon?
Yes. Yeah. Incredible, by the way. I want to include a link to that because for me as a Filipino American, that's like history that I don't know about of my country, my origins, right? And so I felt like I learned something new, but it was something that you pointed out in your reaction is just like, people there will kind of look at you, because you're white, you might be mayabang, like, which is like stuck up in English. Yeah.
Mayabang. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Which in English means like stuck up or like better. You might think of yourself better than, but that's not what you are at all. It's just an assumption based on the color of your skin.
Yeah, it's a really weird. It's a really weird time. It's a really, really weird time. Well, another really, really weird one when we're talking about just these weird places to be. So I was 19 when I came here. So I've been involved with the Philippines. Even when I was back in the US, I had a Pinoy radar. I would hear somebody speaking, I would suddenly be speaking Tagalog with them, and then I'd get invited to a salu-salu or something, So I
that happens.
Yeah, exactly. So even after coming back, so I was here from 2008 to 2010, all in the provinces. This is another issue that I have. Side note, another issue that I have with a lot of these foreigners is they're living in these very, very beautiful. They're living in BGC, which I mean is maybe something like Singapore, honestly. And they have no insight or understanding of what it's like to even live in the province. Where I was living when I was there, it was a basic apartment, but some of them didn't even have shower heads. Some of them had and not hot water. So I'd have to, I'd use the tabo, and I would, it would be cold water in the morning on mornings that were cold on occasion. I'd go and I'd visit people who were living in Bahay Kubo, which is those little bamboo huts and a lot of them dirt floors, it's just like a small side note is that why should somebody take these foreigners' words when they haven't even tried to live like a Filipino, when they haven't even tried to live like yung pangmasa, like how 90% of the people in this country are living, But anyway, like a weird thing when it comes to U.S. and Pinoy relations is when I started my channel, I wanted to speak against the racism of that elderly lady, but then a lot of Filipinos in the comments section were saying, ganyan ang lahat ng mga puti. All the white people are like that. They're all racist. And so that's why I made a channel that says white Filipino, is to challenge that notion. Is to challenge the notion that, hey, because I'm white, I'm racist, or because kung may pusong Pinoy ako, if I have a Filipino heart, then how is it possible? How could you call me racist? How could you include me in that? Like, you need to challenge your ideas about these overgeneralizations, is what my concept was. And so, it's like one of the things that's really weird is going around in the provinces, people would always kind of catcall you. Like, hey, Joe, Alaska, man, what's up, man? Like things like that. And that for the most part, 96% of the time, they don't mean any harm. They just have never seen a white person in their life. But I'm sure you're very well aware of this. If you get called something based on a racial thing multiple times, even if it isn't negative, even if it's positive, it kind of gets on you. It kind of wears on your psyche a little bit. So there were times where they'd be like, hey, Joe, what's up? And then I would go up to them and say, hindi po ako si Joe. And sometimes they'd be like, oh, it was, but what's funny about that is I shared that story once on a comment section of a video, and somebody told me to just shut up. They're like, you don't have a right to think or feel that way. Take it how they mean it, not how you feel. And it's like, but isn't it how it makes the person feel that matters more than, and it's like, and I was totally like, hey, look, people do it. They don't know better. 100% understand that. But if I tell you, hey, I don't like being called that. I don't like you saying that to me. And then you keep doing it. Like, no, shut up, man. You're stupid. Like, seriously? So that's like some of the ways that this is a really, really weird place to be sometimes. And then you've got people, and it's a very, very small amount, but you have people who will say, you're not qualified to talk about this different stuff. Although I've kept my mouth shut for such a long time about different things. And then only after observing for years, for over a decade, am I finally saying something about it. But because people don't know my history in relation to the Philippines, it could instantly just be like, hey, you're white. You're just a foreigner.
Yes.
And I was like, I would never say that to anyone in the U.S. If they had an opinion on something, I don't care what their national background is. If they were speaking out of school in terms of they were saying something like, I don't know, not to be super political, but like if a certain politician, if they were saying, oh, well, this politician doesn't say this or that and isn't racist or whatever, but then we have like Twitter like logs in the thousands of yes, this person is racist, then I would say, hey, like, you know, maybe you don't know this aspect about it or how it is here, but that doesn't, you know, that's just education. That's not saying don't talk because you're a foreigner, you know. Everybody has differing ideas. Everybody has differing ideas and opinions. You know, the ideas and opinions that I've spoken as well have all been something that a Filipino has already said. So I'm more like just being an ally to what an underrepresented group is saying, you know? So it's interesting.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, well, you know, the thing I wanted to touch on, we kind of went a little bit sidetracked here on some other like cultural stuff here, but I do want to get into, and you've touched on it a little bit here, just in your history and your background of coming to the Philippines. And you know, you mentioned that you originally came as a Mormon missionary. Was that something that, did you have a choice or say in where you would go, or was it just predetermined that you would go to the Philippines?
Yeah, so they send you. They choose where the need is and they send you.
So that was the first time you were there, and you left the Philippines and then you went back to the US after that mission, and then you returned for the second time, right? This is under your
2019, and then I've been here since.
Yeah, so tell me about that period in between. You know, from leaving the Philippines after your mission and then coming back here to the States, and then even going into the decision to go back and settle there, essentially.
It was weird. I had this really so I'm not Mormon anymore, and there were aspects of it, I mean, you know, depending on who you talk to. For me personally, I felt it actually was a pretty harmful thing for me, mentally speaking. And I, for whatever reason, would get locked into these ideas of what I could and couldn't do in life. And I feel like part of that was part of the programming. And going back to the Philippines was one of the things that I was like, I just don't think I can do it. I don't know why, like, just like, oh, I don't, like, that would be great. It's kind of like being like, it would be awesome to go to Disney World, but then you don't do anything to like make it happen because you don't think it can happen. I don't know. Or going to France, Paris or something, you know, it's like, oh, that would be a dream, and you don't do anything to work towards that dream. You're just like, you know, I don't know why I was that way, but I did have this dream while I was still living in the Philippines as a missionary, where there was this girl I was dating at the time, or I really cared about, rather, throughout the teenage years. And I was just dreaming about being forgotten by everything and everyone. I mean, you're not in contact with people. You get on the phone 2 times a year to talk with your mom, like when you're a missionary, like, but other than that, you're completely cut off from the outside world. You're also told to not write about anything negative that's going on with you. But anyway, when I was there, I had all this stuff going on, and I had this dream about going back and meeting this girl again, and would I choose to be with her? Well, in the dream, I didn't choose to be with her. I instead got another letter telling me to go back to the Philippines, and then I did. And that was back in 2009. And so I knew that at one point I probably was going to come back here. Like it just felt very real, you know? And so I did, but I would say that definitely creating Puting Pinoy had a lot to do with me being like, I really need to get back to the Philippines. It was just like, you know, if my content is Filipino, I should be like, I wanted to from the very beginning to go back to the Philippines, but I really need to make this happen now. And so, you know, I was a manager at Men's Warehouse. I'd saved a little bit from that. I also did Uber, saved a bit from that. And then came on over, you know. But yeah, it's crazy being back. I went to some of the provinces of the places I lived before, and it's like interesting how much development or how much the same it was depending on the area. But they've built malls, they've built new malls like in different spots, like in provinces where I was like, wow, I never experienced something like this when I lived here before. Like it was, I remember I was excited if I lived in an area that had either a McDo or a Jollibee. You know, that's how provincial I was. Like I was eating at the carinderias all the time, or cooking my own food, you know. So it's and now I'm in Metro Manila, which is another thing by itself. And part of me wishes I was in the provinces, but another part of me is like, well, there's more accessibility in terms of commodities here in Manila. I've heard that the internet doesn't work as well in the provinces. I don't know how true that is and how much it depends on where exactly you are. But yeah, the time that I wasn't in the Philippines, there was a lot of trying times as well, and I moved around a lot even then. And you know, I was living in Virginia for the last like 4 years before I came here, and yeah, it's just rough because life in the U.S., particularly in areas like Virginia, close to Washington D.C., where I was living, people are so caught up in their work and in their careers, and if not their careers, then they've already got their exclusive group of friends. So it was hard to find that. Whereas here in the Philippines, I mean, part of it is probably me being white, speaking Tagalog, but people love to have you join them in drinking and join them for kwentuhan and to just tambay, you know, to do videoke. It's just more of a culture of like, let's spend time together and let's enjoy each other's company. And that's definitely more my speed.
It's just there's more openness, I think, in the culture of the Philippines. And even me being Filipino American, like I recognize that now as an adult, you know, things that were just normal to me, like gigantic family parties where we got the lechon out and everything. It's
and
everybody
to have those
like
regularly. We're a military family. We moved all over the States. We didn't have family near us most of the time. And we didn't even have, my dad was working so much. My mom had some mental health issues. We didn't even eat meals together that often. So, you know, like that's another really big difference that I wished I'd grown up with a little bit more, was family meals and things like that.
What do you think it was about that your first visit to the Philippines on that missionary trip that left such a indelible impression on your mind about the country itself?
So in my first area, I was Kapkab and Mariveles, Bataan, where the Bataan Death March started, actually. I was very discouraged, feeling lost and everything. You know, you don't have the people that you're comfortable with and know and everything. You experience culture shock. I remember going to the Palenque for the first time and just being having all the smells, just sensory overload of the smells of seeing the baboy hanging, you know, the pigs hanging from hooks, and dogs that had interbred like 7 million times, you know, like just wandering the streets, and like it was just a lot to take in. But there was a katulong, I guess they don't say katulong, I guess that's a little derogatory, but a house help who would do our laundry and stuff. And I was having trouble eating. I was having trouble just with a lot of things. And she brought me some corn once, and on the street they butter it and salt it, and it's delicious. And I just remember eating it and being like, man, this is like kissing an angel right now. Like, it was so awesome. And then And then my nanay, she was Nanay Flores. She just really, really took care of me. And I developed a very mother-son relationship with her. And it was wonderful. And I found that we had a lot of similarities. And for me, I wanted that to be a point, hopefully, that people could see and understand, is that by getting to know people from different cultures and different backgrounds, you'll find that there can also be more similarities between you and somebody who isn't of your ethnicity, more so sometimes than people who you share an ethnicity with. Like it all kind of comes down to this individuality. And she had some bad experiences too, but we just forged this really wonderful relationship, and that left a huge impression on me from the very beginning. We'd always cook together, and she'd like sing me songs from Mindanao while she would swing me in the duyan, So it was just really, really sweet. And I love the countryside. I love the nature is beautiful. The sunrises, the sunsets, the stars, seeing like chain lightning happening out over the ocean, like 50 miles away from where you are, so to where you don't even hear it, but you see it. And like, it's beautiful, And just the fact that, people are more about spending time with one another than they are about, like working overtime. And I understand there's some economic reasons for that, that in the US, you kind of have to work like crazy. In the Philippines, like there isn't a lot of opportunities even for that, which is unfortunate. But the point is I think even the people who really work their butts off still love finding time to drink with their friends and to be with their families. So just those aspects. I loved a lot of the OPM. I was really into eraser heads. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. It's like I gotta get back. I gotta be a part of that again.
And then making that decision to come back, like, correct me if I'm wrong here of what I heard you say earlier, but it seemed like you made that response to the incident that happened in Daly City, like not far from where I live.
The exact video,
and that went viral on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And so this was before YouTube, but when you decided to go to the Philippines, did that coincide with creating content around YouTube?
I had started creating content first. It was always in the back of my mind that I want to go back to the Philippines, but once I had Puting Pinoy, it was like okay, you know what? This is the catalyst. Like, just go, like, just do it, make it happen. So, I would say it did coincide at a certain point. But I was always going to come back to the Philippines, but this is kind of what gave me that push to really like come back and be here.
Gotcha. That makes sense to me. And then coming back and going to the Philippines, was that something, going into YouTube, was that something that you just decided to put majority of your time into when you came back into the Philippines, or were you doing other stuff as well, as far as work and whatnot?
Yeah, mostly just YouTube. Like, it's I wanted to do YouTube well before, but or acting. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to do something just creatively. I had already done the sort of 9-to-5 traditional type of stuff, and I just wanted to be done with that. I didn't like the idea of, I was working at Men's Warehouse, and I didn't like receiving messages like, we proudly give our employees the day off on Christmas to spend with their families. It's like, you proudly give us the day off. Are you guys serious? You take every major holiday off in corporate. You know what I mean? Like, so I didn't like that. I was just like, I need to be working for myself, even if it's going to be hard, even if it's going to be stressful. Like, there's no other option for me. I've got to do something that I am guiding and that I take into my own hands.
And creatively, were you always someone that dabbled in creativity throughout your life?
Yeah.
Did you have other creative interests beyond just filmmaking?
So I never really knew much about filmmaking until I started the channel and started editing and stuff. Which most of my videos, by the way, were, all of my videos so far have been edited on my phone. In terms of creativity, starting off, I made homemade movies, but no edits at all. So it's like one take every time, because I didn't have editing equipment and I didn't even know that was a thing at the time, like stupidly enough, but since I was like 11 years old, I'd make like films, and then music. I play guitar, I write songs, I sing, and all that. Poetry, I'm really into like writing and stuff, or was really into writing for a time. But yeah, creating was always been a part of my life. My parents are both very into acting and or music.
I kind of have an idea of what the answer might be to this next question that I'm going to ask you, but I want to confirm if my suspicion is correct. But I'm curious, how would you characterize your YouTube channel and the content that you create?
Oh, this is actually something I've been struggling with, like what specific niche, because it's pang Pinoy. It's for Filipino audience. I have comedy sketches, I have music, I have commentaries, and I have like education. I would say the commentaries a lot of times are like education based or like social issue based conversations, discussions. So I would say that more than anything, so if I were to make like other channels, I think eventually I want to make a Puting Pinoy comedy channel and a Puting Pinoy commentary channel, which I feel like that's more of what this is it's more based on commentary and analyzing different, whether it's social situations or, giving some psychology, like infusing some psychological elements into the discussion. Mental health awareness is something that's lacking in the Philippines, which is something I want to use my platform to talk a lot about. Later, I'm going to be using it to discuss racism. I feel like that's how it started anyway. So I'll be discussing racism later. Unfortunately, there was a lot of Filipinos taking to comment on Miss Canada. And Miss Canada is Black, and there's a lot of, unfortunately, very racist things said in Tagalog. And she went ahead and shared it, I think, without even knowing what it meant, but just knowing that they were derogatory things. Maybe somebody pointed it out to her. So later on today, in your early morning, I'll be teaming up with some of my followers, actually. One of them is an Indian who grew up in the Philippines, like straight up born in the Philippines and lived his whole life here. And he experienced being called Bombay and being called Osama bin Laden, and just to open up that discussion, because that seems to be a very interesting thing too, where there isn't a whole ton of awareness. Only Americans are racist, like.
Yeah,
Speaking ironically.
It seems like you are embracing a role of facilitating conversation about very touchy and difficult subjects, and that makes me wonder how you navigate that, right? Like, how do you because again, there are certain things that you
Very
might
slowly.
say, content that you might put out that is gonna light a fuse up in some people. And how do you just navigate that trail and try to have a conversation that is constructive and not destructive about these issues that are important, that are worth discussing?
Yeah, exactly. Need to be had. Like a big one is I am an atheist. And there's a lot. I mean, if you're Filipino, you're Catholic. Like, but that's not the reality. But so many people, it's scarier for a person to come out as an atheist than it is as an LGBTQ member here in the Philippines. Like, that's just how intense of a thing it is. And so I'm working with and discussing with a lot of the Pinoy atheist community about things. And, right now, one of the things we're working on is to not be jerks to people, like to like facilitate good conversations and discussions instead of ad hominem attacks on people who are religious. But it comes in the U.S. separation of church and state is in a relatively good place. Secularism is doing pretty good, and you don't have everything being influenced by one specific religious tradition. Whereas here in the Philippines, that only exists on paper. There's people who have applied for jobs, and then you have to say your religion on the application. You have to write that in, and she said none, and the guy said, I'm just going to write Catholic, and wrote it for her. And she was like, excuse me? And then he proceeded to make perverted remarks about her. This is the religious dude, So it's like one of the conversations is like, there's a big issue of overpopulation. You've got so many people who can't afford, they can't afford to have all the children that they're having, but they're still having them. And one of the correlations we can see about this is birth control is very frowned upon and very taboo. Sex education is very taboo because, God says this and God says that. And in a sense, it just kind of creates further issues, people who are not using, and there are tons of people who are religious who understand the importance of birth control and understand the importance of family planning, but because of how things are with the culture, you have a struggle with that. And not to mention, a funny thing about it, speaking of colonialism, is that Catholicism was forced upon Filipinos, essentially, And so it's just like it's addressing some of these topics that are taboo and doing it in a way that is, look, I'm not trying to change anyone's beliefs, just trying to create a conversation, open up a dialogue so that we can affect other things, How is an economy ever going to improve if, you're having 10 kids or, you know what I mean? And you are making $30 a week,
Yeah, I just imagine it's just very challenging to go that route. But again, it seems like to me that this is not something that you woke up one day and you said, I'm just going to start doing this. This is kind of like I feel like for you, it's been building up, right? Like this is years and years and years of thinking that you've been processing in your mind. And now you now know how to articulate it through your content that you create.
And not just articulate it, but wanting to make sure that I wasn't just speaking as a white person. That's something I think about a lot. Like, am I speaking as a white person, or am I speaking on behalf of the voiceless who like really think and feel these different things already, and I'm just helping to be a conduit, you know? So like I'm very, very, very cognizant of all of that. And I was so scared for the longest time to just say anything that I was afraid I would get bashed over. You know, I was afraid, there was a video, this girl, Yuri Bruce, she made a video for foreigners about dating Filipinas, and it was very derogatory towards certain Filipinas. Like, date a Filipina who has a great education, date a Filipina who comes from an affluent family, a good family background. And a lot of that enraged a lot of people. That was a very viral thing. And I made a video about that. And I made a video about that, but I wanted to make another video about the way somebody commented on it. And this guy is a Filipino American who at that time he was growing, and I think he has over 1 million subscribers now, but it's a family. But he was taking that video and calling her, saying she looks like a prostitute, saying her eyebrows are stupid, saying she's ugly, saying just all these ad hominem things that are irrelevant to the actual issue. And that really bothered me. It's like, okay, yeah, what she is saying is not good, but let's actually address what the issues are instead of just adding to the toxicity, you know? And I was too afraid to say anything because I was like, well, somebody's going to just say, you're not Filipino, don't talk about stuff, you know? I don't know. I mean, now I'm learning as I've gained more perspective, as I've met more people who, as I've discovered these different people who are just living very much, quietly about what they really think and feel. I probably should have made a commentary about it at that time. I probably made a mistake in not doing that, And now it wouldn't make sense for me to randomly go back to that specific one and to say this. But now that there are other things that continue to happen and still happen, well, I should lend my voice to that. Like I've spent so much time keeping quiet on things. I spent forever keeping quiet about Pinoybaiting. I spent forever keeping quiet about just all these different topics, and it comes to a point where you can't do that anymore. It's like, it's not good for your mental health, and it's also not good for people to not hear things as well.
Do you ever feel any sense of fear or retribution against or blowback from some of the content that you're making from more influential figures in the Philippines, right? Because we know that there are some issues in terms of the government there. And,
I wouldn't. So, and when it comes to politics, I stay away from politics. According to the attorney as well, it's not something that you're legally allowed to do as a foreigner. I could make commentary. I could definitely make commentary about, I don't think this is right.
Mm-hmm.
But in order of being like, this person is an idiot and a loser and blah, 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 not that I would really, because, that's just not me. But as far as the political stuff goes, I did recently make one about these community pantries that have been popping up in the Philippines. And they were saying there were links to communism. And that these people were recruiting for communism. Well, here in the Philippines, that carries a little bit different of a connotation. There's a lot of terrorist groups, insurgent groups that have existed. And I wanted to say something simply about not jumping to conclusions. because people were what, the witch hunts in the US, McCarthy's witch hunts of communists. There's now red tagging here in the Philippines. That's essentially the same thing. And I said, people having ideas or ideals is not automatically, should not automatically earn them punishment or whatever, because you can believe in whatever, communism, socialism, as long as you're not inciting violence and as long as you're not like promoting terrorism, right? You can have a belief. And I was saying that essentially, but in even more diplomatic tone. And there were still people who got super, super upset. And the people who said before, wow, you make such great content, you speak such great Tagalog, were suddenly like, you're just a foreigner and your Tagalog sucks.
Dismissive.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, look, I wasn't even saying anything politically. I was just simply saying, let's observe our logic on things. Let's be slower to hate on something before we know the full story.
I guess where I'm going there with that is why I'm curious about it is because we live in this world now where certain things that weren't considered political before,
yes,
they're now political.
Yeah.
And I wonder how you, again, going back to my question of navigation, seeing that space and trying to figure out the best course of action to address these things in your content.
There's a lot of people who are against Black Lives Matter here in the Philippines. And it's like, look, a little perspective is that Black Americans disproportionately get arrested, disproportionately get killed by police. It's so disproportionate that you would say there's probably a system in place that needs to be fixed. And, people get so upset about people saying, let's stand in solidarity with people and not allow social injustice to continue. And they get so upset about that. It's like, what's so wrong with allowing a person to not be persecuted, oppressed? And you know what I mean? It's weird that there's this, there's this politicization of everything, right? It's just like, if we were just being empathetic human beings, all politics aside, hopefully the world would be a better place, Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested in seeing how people are going to react today. I asked in a poll about racism in the Philippines, and that'll be our topic later. I asked them, how intense is racism in the Philippines? And going down the list from very to not at all. And most people actually are saying it's a very big issue. So I think that this should be a good discussion. I don't know if it'll receive unanimity in terms of being liked, but I think it'll be good. I look forward to engaging in this discussion, and especially because I don't think foreigners are talking about this with Filipinos in a place from kind of being in that weird position of inhabiting different worlds at the same time,
On a similar line of topic here, what would you say are your biggest challenges as a creator?
Honestly, well, let's say 3. So one is keeping up with the pace, posting consistently. Recently, I got this laptop and this cool USB microphone that works really beautifully. But before that, I was editing all of my videos on my phone, and that can lead to a lot of headaches. And then if you have a video that doesn't perform as well, that can get really, really discouraging really quick, because you spend like 10 to 20 hours on an edit, and then it performs well, or it does. If it doesn't perform well, it's like, oh man, do I want to, like, do I keep doing that? Like what do I need to do? What do I need to change, or whatever? And then I think Pinoybaiting is one big issue too. So one is I get discouraged. Another one is if I didn't, I feel like sometimes people expect me to create a certain type of content just because I am a foreigner. And that kind of content would be talking about how great Filipinos are. You know, like something that was kind of fluff and didn't really mean anything. And it sucks because I have a perspective that makes me not able to say those things without being a straight up liar, you know? You know, I can't be like, my first time eating adobo, my first time blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? So that's a big challenge, is a lot of what an audience wants, I think, a lot of times when it comes to the Philippines, is reaction videos to Pamoy Marcelito singing, you know, his falsetto, you know, the prayer, or, you know, things like that, like where it's just somebody watching a Filipino do something and being super shocked and amazed. And it's like, if you grow up with that, how can you continue to be shocked or amazed? Or if you've like been exposed to that so many times now. So even those channels, even the reaction channels and whatnot, like if you've been exposed to that already in like 50 other videos, how can you still continue to put on an act? So that puts me in a weird position. Do I go ahead and just do what people expect me to do as a foreigner if they don't know me already? Do I go ahead and just fill that role and that stereotype? Or do I really struggle to create something meaningful?
Yeah, it's like it's just this tension between giving people what they want versus giving people what they need. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, right. I feel like probably like a lot of newer creators, or if they're, you know, they're just early on in their career, they just want to get a video to pop off and go viral and have that bigger audience. Yeah. But then it sounds like you're in a position now where, you know, you're getting closing in to like 100,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel. Like you've earned your influence at this stage, and now, you know, you have an opportunity to create and give people content that would be more beneficial to them rather than just like giving them the junk food diet of content.
I hope so. You know, I told I brought this commentary up, and somebody said, man, you sound, they're like, you sound really like off in what you're saying. It was a commentary essentially that like, why is there not more of an emphasis on like meaningful content? It doesn't show in the views. It doesn't show in the response. And somebody was like, oh, but said, you know, it's on you to get to handle this. And I'm like, I agree, it is. But if I was a prank channel with 5 million subscribers and an average view count of 3 million views per video, I would still make the comment that, hey, meaningful content should be doing better than mine is, you know, as a very successful prank channel. You know, it's like, it doesn't invalidate what my point was. It's not really about, and though it is frustrating, being someone who whenever the thing I wanted to do was I wanted to do a Mr. Beast formula type of thing. Mm-hmm. You know, that was a big part of what I wanted to do, was create a win-win-win type of scenario where you give people opportunities or help them out in some way. They are grateful to you. They give you views. The audience enjoys it. You enjoy it. The person who benefited enjoys it. And it's a win-win-win. I call that the Mr. Beast formula. And that's what I wanted to do when I came here originally, you know? And to be transparent about that fact too. I feel too, when it comes to the charity vlogging community, sometimes they act as if they are the angels that people say they are. And it's like, you know, hopefully there's a little bit more admission of like, hey, I do this because you guys give me views. And like, please continue to give me views and I'll continue to do it, which I felt Mr. Beast has been very transparent about. You know, so it's like, it's just having transparent, it's being very genuine and authentic. That's my hope, is no matter what level of the game a person is at, that they have authenticity and are honest with themselves and their audience.
Yeah. At times, though, do you feel like that even if you are authentic and you have good intentions with everything that you're making, that sometimes it can still just miss with people, and they might assume, like what we've talked about, right? Is like they will just say, well, you're just a white guy. You know, you're a white foreigner here in the Philippines. You don't know anything. Right. Even though you have the right intent, it's just missed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's frustrating, but that's something, you know, that's all just part of it. That's all just part of the growing, and that's something I've had to become more comfortable with. You know, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people for my market. There's 112 million Filipinos worldwide, I think, something like that. Within that, there's definitely niche groups at least a million, perhaps, that are going to say, you know what, finally, like, because another part of it is the algorithm, right?
Yes.
Another reason I hate Pinoybaiting, because the reason that this is an expectation of foreigners is because people are clicking, you know?
Yes.
And that just feeds the loop, and it feeds the cycle of foreigners coming here to exploit instead of to offer something, you know?
And that to me, like when you bring that up, that is an issue that it's more of like a platform issue than it is a creator issue. Like there has to be some sort of like different algorithm created that like gives people the content that they need versus the content that they want, that they just want to binge on. But the incentives are not necessarily aligned for that, because the platforms, they want you to stay on them as long as possible to generate more ad dollars.
Exactly. And then and that's understandable. And I think YouTube does a decent job with it. I feel like they could maybe tweak it a couple more ways where it's like, okay, maybe this is distantly related and it's something that's worth viewing, and pushing that to more people, you know? Because most people are just clicking on what's presented to them instead of looking for something specifically. In fact, at least for my channel, and I dare say for a lot of channels, you have a lot more people who are, it's a lot more on, I mean, Mr. Beast has surpassed this. PewDiePie has surpassed this, where it's their retention, their audience retention. You know, they probably have something like 60 to 85% of people watching because they've been a long time subscriber, you know. But for like when you're in my position, a lot of it is about getting that in the algorithm, getting that popping in the algorithm of people, new people discovering it. And hopefully it'll get to a point where closer to 50% or 60% are watching because they've been long time subscribers, you know. But as far as it is right now, I think my notification stuff is like 20%, or, you know, it has a lot of room for improvement. So, but that also just means that getting the videos and the views presents more of a challenge. And so it's like, well, do I do the, you know, well, I do have videos that I've just been too scared to edit. I've been too scared to edit and post, because they're such, I feel, gold mine ideas that if I don't get it just right in the editing, or the algorithm just randomly doesn't push me the right way, that's something that I have been sitting on. Like, I've got a video with huge YouTubers speaking Tagalog where I personally interviewed them, and among there is Mark Rober and Mr. Beast and Daniel Thrasher and Alan Becker, like, you know, like 5 or 6, Legal Eagle is on it. Like, there's like 5 or 6 creators who have over 15 million subscribers that I was able to just sit with and like, hey, let's speak some Tagalog, you know? And it's like, man, if there was like, if ever there was a video that should go viral, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For anybody who loves YouTubers, and, you know, I mean, I'm sure Mr. Beast has a really large Filipino following, and not, you know, but like, what if I post that and then it gets like 2,000 views, you know? Like, it's just like, that's a scary thought, because the situations I was in for that video to happen cost money, cost opportunity, you know, like it's just, that's not a thing that nobody has. That video out of all of the creators, I'm the one with that video, you know. But it's like, I'm too scared to edit those. Like, I'm like if I put this out there and it doesn't get the result that I hope for, like, oh, what a waste, you know.
It's a fear of the outcome. Like, if the outcome doesn't, that's, I mean, that sucks to hear at the same, you know, because I, like, for me personally, I'm such a proponent of just like doing things for the sake of doing them. Like, I think to get to, I mean, and I don't want to speak for you, and I'd be curious about how you know, your journey and your path to where you are, where you're almost at 100,000 subscribers. But I just know from like having spoken to other creators that there is just this, yeah, we're just doing it. Like, we consistently do it, and we stick with it, and we're not like focused so much on, we try not to be so attached to like how many views we get, how many subscribers we get. But at the same time, like, that still is a metric that you pay attention to.
Yeah.
You know,
well, it's where you get money, and it's where you get, you know, so like for me, in terms of, like, that's definitely something I'd like to work more with myself personally, to be able to have more of that mindset. And I, you know, I've created a lot of things that I was just like, oh, just go for it. I'll do collaborations where I'm like, I don't care if this gets views or not. I'm just happy to do, like, to hang out with this person. You know what I mean? But those 2 videos, I'm just like, man, I gotta be so careful, you know, because if I'm not, you know what I mean? It is, it's going to make me sad. Like, you know,
yeah.
it's just like, how could you not? I mean, you just hear that idea. I mean, I'm trying to think of what other things would be.
You know what I want to do? I want to send you something. This reminds me of, he's another YouTuber. I actually reached out to him to come on as a guest. Hopefully at some point he will. But he has a YouTube channel called Behind the Brand. And I heard him on a podcast. His name is Brian Elliott, on another podcast where he faced that same issue, where he had this piece of content that was amazing. Like, oh my God, this message is like incredible. And then he posted it, and it did not generate any kind of traction whatsoever. But the interesting thing that he did is he took it down and then he reposted it later, or he made some edits to it, I think, and kind of presented it is the same message, but kind of presented it in a different way.
Yeah.
And then it actually got traction, and it took off the way that he thought it would have originally.
And I wonder if maybe that's something I do, just put it, create it. And then if it doesn't get the level of views that I think it should, maybe just like pretend it didn't happen and then re-edit it and then like repost it, That's an interesting concept. That makes it a little less scary.
At the same time too, does it not also, do you also have moments where you are reflecting on the number of people that you're reaching, right? Like we're talking about, if I only get 2,000 views, that's kind of not great based on my metrics.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like those are still like 2,000 people. Like if you actually put 2,000 people in a physical place around you,
it's crazy. Like, it's weird. It's weird to think like having 81,000 people have touched the subscribe button because they saw me. And, to have, I don't know, close to 3 million views on my channel, like where it's like they... like 3 million, not there. Obviously people have, some of those are the same people, but for that to, let's just say like 150,000 people, or I guess I've had videos that have 40,000+ views. Yeah. To say that you have like 400,000 people that saw something that you created, that's crazy. That's a crazy feeling, because it's not like, and you take it for granted when it's just a number right there. But you're right. If you put all those people in one place, it would be like, dang, like all of you guys saw this, like that's insane to think. And it's insane to think that, 81,000 click to subscribe. Whether they come back or not, 81,000 people are subscribed,
Yeah, how do you keep yourself from getting desensitized from it? Like as the numbers keep getting higher, because that's, like you said, like when you just see it as a number on a screen, it's like, okay, it's a number.
That's one of the reasons I like to create content with other people, because then it becomes fun. Then it becomes, no. I make what I make, I believe in. I really believe in. But sometimes it can have a lot of weight or pressure with it. If I'm making it with another person, I have something to instantly feed off of and feedback from. Or if I'm talking with somebody, if I talk to a follower in person, like if somebody is like, hey, are you putting Pinoy? Then I'm like, wow, that means something. But if it's just numbers on the screen and you're not actually meeting the people, you don't see them, like I think that is easy to get desensitized, because it's like, I don't know what impact I'm having. I don't know if I'm having an impact, You could do comment sections too, but some people, the majority of people who watch don't comment,
Yes.
So it's like, you don't know where you stand. You don't know what you're doing right or doing wrong, or you have only a little idea of what you're doing right and doing wrong. And I've followed a lot of the YouTube gurus' advice. I've done different things. I got that jump cut one that was so aggressively marketed for the longest time.
Jump cut. That's funny. I actually, I know the founder of Jump Cut. We're not friends or anything. Kong. Yes. Yeah. Kong. I know Kong. I've met him a couple times. Like we've met him when I used to live in Las Vegas. Back in the day, we actually connected at one point.
Oh, cool.
So.
There's a video I saw recently. I don't know how much validity there is to it, but there was a breaking up, a falling out apparently between Jesse and Kong, and I guess the YouTube video that I had seen was like, Kong is the good one. Like,
yeah, I mean, speaking from my experience of like hanging out with him, he's a good dude. Like he's treated me out to like dinner and coffee a couple,
awesome.
like a handful of times. Just like, hey man, if you're in LA, hit me up. you know, and I haven't seen him in a while, but he's been a nice guy to me.
That's awesome. With Kong, you know, Kong is a great example of like the business, you know, acting on the business aspects of YouTube. That's something I haven't been as good about. I've been more focused on let's get the views, let's get the subscribers. Why
is that, do you think? What is it about the business side that isn't clicking for you at this point?
One of it is not knowing so I guess brand endorsers would be a good way to go for me. But I personally have felt, again, like being a white person, I'm somewhat hesitant. I've been somewhat hesitant to be like, hey guys, I'm going to sell this and please buy it. And then how much of my audience could actually afford that? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I have a very, I don't know if I'm overestimating or underestimating. And so I guess that's why I guess I don't have the analytics to know people's incomes to where I'd feel comfortable. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then I guess just the stigma. Like, I don't want to be viewed as a person who's being exploitative, I think, is another aspect. But also, I guess I've had a lot of shyness too when it comes to things like being a creator all my life. I just am happy for somebody to watch something I did or to hear a song I did. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it makes it difficult to create in the future if you don't have food on your plate. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have the aspects that would help you to continue, then that's difficult too. But as I have, let's see here, I have 150 videos, I think, and let's just say there's an average of 20 to 30 hours that I've spent on each of those videos. I think I've earned myself maybe the justification to say, hey guys, I'm doing this thing, please support me, like Patreon or whatever, you know. That's just been me. That's been my, I guess, hesitancy on my part. I need to delve more into the business side of things so that I can stop stressing so much, perhaps, you know.
Yeah. It's I feel like there's so much opportunity now, like infrastructure in place for creators like yourself to actually earn income, make a respectable living from this. And it's not like you have to become Mr. Beast where he's like this massive phenomenon, right? Like, yes. I think there are tools now that hopefully in the future will allow more of like a creator middle class to thrive.
Yeah.
And
like that. Yeah.
And that's not even my original idea. I credit that to Lee Jin. She's like a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley who is very like championing this passion economy, creator economy movement that we're seeing like kind of take off here in this decade. But I understand where you're coming from, man, because like as a creative, I feel like you're indoctrinated to believe that I just gave you this thing and like you said, it's you consumed it, you absorbed it, you watched it, you listened to it, like that should be good enough for me, right? When it took you time, like it took you hours and hours and hours to create this content, these videos that you're making, and that, you know, it's only logical and fair that, you know, there's nothing wrong with you asking like for compensation for it, right?
Yeah, you know, another thing too is I have come across situations too where somebody would ask you to do something or want you to be a part of something, but there's not really like a payoff for it. For instance, I was invited by somebody running a little concert thing, and I asked about like talent fees, and then they don't get back to you. You know what I mean? So that I think that's another part of it, is like you're afraid about what the response will be if you will like blow a potential opportunity. And I felt that had also happened early on as well, because I was invited to play a concert with like Morrissey and a couple other like big OPM names for like a 2,000 audience sort of thing. And I asked about a talent fee, and I could tell that I didn't say a number or anything, but they seemed to shy away from that. Oh, we don't have a budget for that. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, I mean, that's fine. I'll still do it. But then their mind's already made up. Oh, he asked for a talent fee. You know what I mean? And so it's like, it's very conflicting about how to navigate it for me, just based on what my experience has been. I need a win. I need a win or two under my belt for me to feel more confident in that. I feel, because it's like, what wouldn't it have been better that I didn't get money on that show and performed, and then that's more exposure, but at the same time, that's exactly what people exploit when it comes to creatives, It's,
and you've already got
exposure.
Exactly, and you've already got enough exposure with, again, 80,000, around 80,000 subscribers now, like thousands of people already watching your video. Like you already have the influence, and if anything, those people, those companies, they're benefiting more in a deal with you rather than you getting any benefit from them. It's not necessarily even a win-win situation, and I feel like that's where the tide, I think, is changing in this space, because creators, influencers, that can be debated what title people want to call themselves. They understand, like, people are starting to understand their worth, and like they're just not going to give out these free lunches anymore. It's not like, hey, I'll take a free hat. Like, I had a guest on the show. He's great at this. Like, maybe I'll send you his episode, but he has a small YouTube channel. His name is Owen Hemzath, and he got 60,000 subscribers, but he's built like a viable business from it, right? Like essentially coaching other YouTubers, kind of like what Kong was doing with Jump Cut, on how to present themselves, how to build a content strategy. But he's been able to build like a living for himself through an audience of 60,000 on YouTube, and of course I think the challenge for you, like, from this is me just like kind of putting on like my marketing hat and like looking at you from like a brand perspective is of course like the audience that you reach, right? Like the majority of the people that you reach are in the Philippines. So of course income levels aren't necessarily going to be that high there, which will probably lower the potential lower the amount that a brand would want to pay to reach that audience, right? But I think where there might be opportunity, I don't know, well, you might have some of these analytics, right? I'm American.
Yes.
But I'm Filipino American, and I'm seeing your content. I watch your content every now and then. And I imagine, as you mentioned, that you're not just only with YouTube, you're global. Like your niche is reaching a Filipino audience, but it can be a global Filipino audience where you're reaching other Filipino people who have now relocated into more affluent countries.
Definitely.
And how like they're potentially are advertisers and brands who want to reach that demographic themselves. You know? And so
that's a great point.
How do you figure out a way to like present that as an option to a brand or somebody that you're pitching, or even just creating your own stuff? Like, we've talked about, you've brought up Mr. Beast here a couple times. Like the one thing that I admire about him is like he's going out and his team is like just building their own businesses. Like they did the Mr. Beast burger thing, right? And like they could have done that with McDonald's, but now they just own it themselves. They own the whole chain themselves rather than having to split the revenue with McDonald's or Burger King or another fast food company.
I'm so envious. I really want to try one. But, with Mr. Beast, something that was so great with him was he got to a level, I think this is one of the very big, it's like once I get the money, once I'm at the right level, I definitely want to start assembling a team, because right now it's just me, and that can get, and my girlfriend, who's being wonderfully supportive with me running ideas to her, but yeah, like that's one thing that can be really exhausting. One of the things I've done to kind of help abate that is to do these live streams, and I committed myself this week to do a live stream. I'm having a hard time saying that I'm going to do it daily, but I've said 5 to 6 times a week, so that way I can still edit and create the content that I like. Anyway, laptops make a huge difference. Can I just say that? Like, going from my phone, you cannot do a live stream where you can pull up other windows and share the content. And that just makes a huge difference if you can, for instance, do a live reaction video or a live, you know what I mean?
I like that too. I like the one that I saw of you the other day.
Thank you.
Like, that one was cool.
I'm trying to obviously I'm so new to it that I'm just trying to figure out a way to make it run as smoothly as possible, so that somebody who's watching it after it going live, once it's published, to not be bogged down by, this is a live presentation. I am so ridiculously, this is even editing my videos. I'm so like, oh man, they're going to click off at this point. They need to, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so like, if you've seen, look at my video, Easy Mill, my response to Easy Mill's haters, I think it is. But you just watch that, and like, I put a lot of time into my edits. A 10-minute video is going to take me 8 to 12 hours, to edit. It's
time consuming.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
It's very,
and I love the final product. I love the end result. Whereas your live stream, you've got to, that's perhaps why they have controllers, when these other YouTube channels, they've got people behind the scenes running everything to help you, go through it really, really smoothly. But that's something I'll be learning. But I still just love the effects. I love a jump cut. I love trying to create humor with those jump cuts, or trying to keep it interesting by changing visuals. I'm very much into that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's there's just so many things. I wonder too, even as you were talking about some of the ideas that you have for your channel, like, if there's a way for you to still talk about, this is your niche, is talking about Filipino culture, cultural things, but like reaching more people like myself who are like, we're curious about it.
I think
like,
the question is, what content could I do that would also be very applicable to like Filipino Americans, for instance?
Yes.
And making those videos like that. And that's another weird thing about being a third culture adult. Filipinos in the Philippines versus Filipinos in America, there's some differences. And one of the differences I come across, one of the weird things is, as you said earlier, I might be more Filipino than you. I always feel a little weird about that, because I'm like, I appreciate it as a compliment. But for instance, I've been in situations where I have subscribers who are like, cursing Filipino Americans. And I'm like, hey, those are my people too. Like, those are like, I have so many friends who are Filipino American and they don't know Tagalog. And there's reasons why they don't know Tagalog, because I'm a huge advocate of Tagalog and things. But like, I understand the reasons, and it's just hard for somebody to understand that if they haven't lived in another country already themselves. Or, it's just such a weird thing to balance. I've had moms come up to me and be like, shaming their kids right in front of me and them, like, but hindi ka marunong mag-Tagalog, siya mas Pinoy siya sa'yo. And it's just like...
That's yeah, I know what you're talking about. Jared, there's so many things that we talked about today. I want to close on a note. I want to close on a question about your hopes for the future and where you see where you would like to take your channel going ahead. What are your hopes for it moving forward?
I would like, more than anything, so I'd like my brand to be very well established. And beyond that, I'd like to create opportunities for other Filipino creators and for, I guess, just the arts in general. I'd love to create something that could give people opportunities to advance in life. And to, I guess, just build that and bring that up in the community. I call my followers Kampi, which roughly translates to ally or comrade. And I really mean that. I want to help them out and for us to help each other out, really. I want to facilitate growth and positivity for people, whether that means discussing difficult issues and addressing them and coming to a greater, I guess, reconciliation of those things. But more so than anything, I'd like to create opportunities for people. I'd like to create maybe creator programs where people can collaborate and really build something.
Man, it's an aspirational thing to chase, and I think from talking to you, I feel like your heart is in a good place, and it's going to be, obviously, it's going to be a challenge, but I wish you luck in that endeavor and with everything that you do. So, Jared, it was awesome having you on this episode of the Videocraft show presented by Video Husky. As I wrap up here, why don't you remind everybody where they can find you, where they can follow you if they want to keep in touch and watch your content?
Sure. You can follow me at Puting Pinoy on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. I have a Twitter that I hardly use. And then if you're into gaming, I do have Puting Pinoy Plays, and I further have a channel for Philippine cats. So yeah, you can follow me there. Also, please be sure to subscribe to Video Husky. Thank you so much to John for reaching out to me and making this experience a really pleasant one. I appreciate the insights and the feedback as well.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks again to my guest, Jared Ammon Gilet, a.k.a. Puting Pinoy, for joining me on this episode of the Videocraft show presented by Video Husky. But before you go, got a couple quick things for you. First of all, if you enjoyed the show, could you share it with a friend? Share it with someone who you think might find the content valuable. Second, you can find the show notes for this episode and previous ones over at www.videocraftshow.com. And third, if you're a content creator that struggles to organize and script your ideas, we've got a resource for you. Get a copy of our free script template. Using it can help you structure your videos and save you hours from filming in the process. To download it, just go to videocraftshow.com, or if you're watching right here on YouTube, find the link in the description below, and it'll get delivered straight to your inbox right after you sign up to our email list. Also, if you're enjoying the show, make sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. We're always trying to make the show better for listeners and viewers like you. Finally, if you're watching the show on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button. It helps us with the YouTube algorithm and gets the show in front of other creators just like you. And leave us a comment below too. We read every last one. And don't forget to subscribe as well. I appreciate that. We're obviously trying to drive up the subscriptions here and just gain more reach on this show, reach more people. That is the goal. Reach more, influence more, teach more. Thank you to my team over at Video Husky for helping me to produce the show. Got to shout out my producer, Nikki Vicente, and my editor, Vinny Luterio, for editing the video, as well as Paulo Lopez on graphics. Let's do a jump cut there. Thanks to my team over at Video Husky for helping me to produce the show. Shout out to my producer, Nikki Vicente. my editor, Vinny Luterio, and graphics by Paulo Lopez. If you want your videos edited to look just like this, visit videohusky.com to learn more. We'll see you next week on another episode, another edition of the Videocraft Show presented by Video Husky.